What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Steelers. I'm Daniel, your Steel Curtain Network host. And what is going on, guys? Like, last time I spoke to you guys, and due to the schedule being the reason why it's been so long, it's been like 3 games since we spoke. And on the State of the Steelers episode, Steelers were 10-3. They basically just kind of needed 1 or 2 wins or 1 win to clinch the North. And, they were going into their difficult part of the season, so to speak, the difficult part of the schedule, and come out with 3 losses. I thought the Steelers would have at least pulled out at least one of those. Most importantly, to beat the Baltimore Ravens. And instead, after coming off of some pretty dominating performances, scoring up 44 points against the Bengals, 27 points against the Browns, they end up, their highest amount of points that they scored was against the Ravens at 17. They only scored 10 points this last week and 13 against the Eagles. It was it's been really, really poor. I don't know what's going on with this team. It just seems to me like the sky is falling, so to speak. I can't say it any better than that. And can it be stopped? What's going on? What is happening here? Who's to blame? Well, if you listen to the players, especially on the defensive side, it seems like there might be somebody that is not doing their job, who's not holding up to their end of the bargain. Who this person is up for debate. There's a couple of people that have debated who this person may be, or who they are referring to. Obviously, it's somebody in the secondary, because that's where the mishaps have been happening. Right now, there was a lot of big runs against the Ravens as well. I know that they were talking about the flat, route from Worthy, the one that ended up being the first score of the game. How they talked about, don't give up the flat, don't give up the flat. And I don't know whose fault it was. Minkah Fitzpatrick was the closest defensive back near there. Could it be Minkah? I don't know. I think that, from what I understand, he declined to talk after the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. When it comes to PFF, and I get it, you got to take your PFF with a grain of salt. He's not been one of the more highly rated players, so to speak. I thought he's done an okay job this year. He finally got a splash play, but there has been a lack of splash, and there's been some more situations where he may not be in the right position. And I'm not saying that it's all on him. I think that Cam Sutton obviously is another guy that was in the secondary, not in position, where they threw the ball right over him. He was flat-footed. He was standing there. In fact, there was another situation where he had made another mistake, and Corey Trice was looking at him like, what are you doing? A rookie telling him, or looking at him like, come on, man. And so, these third and longs and long distance situations and unable to get off of the field has been concerning. And I think that played a pivotal role in the reasons why, the Pittsburgh Steelers ended up, in the situation that they did. Against the Eagles, the offense only had 2 opportunities in the second half. That's insane. Now, I get it in the first half that the offense couldn't stay on the field, third down after third down after third down. And early on, it seemed like the Steelers were, taking care of Saquon Barkley. In fact, I think they did end up taking care of Saquon. But after a while, you're going to get tired and exposed. And I felt like that may have played a role. There was some injuries in that game against the Eagles. Joey Porter Jr. goes out. TJ Watt ends up rolling an ankle, things of that nature. And so I don't think he's 100% yet. This long rest period now, I think it's going to be a good reset button for this team to go into, to play against the Cincinnati Bengals in their last week in Acrisure. And so, I think that this is a much needed mini break. The Steelers played 11 games, 2 on the road against all 3 against playoff bound teams. It was a difficult stretch. I was hoping they'd get more than get at least a win. Nothing. It was a goose egg. When it comes to the offensive side, well, you know what? Let's stick on the defense side. There was some gashes in the running game as well. Now, who was supposed to be in those positions? I don't know if one of the defensive backs or the safety. Maybe it is Minka that's supposed to come down and crash in on certain plays, and he's not. It just doesn't. I don't think that's the correct answer, though. If I had to take a guess, it'd be, well, there's a situation where Derrick Henry made a big run, and it was Cam Hayward who was occupying his spot, and directly behind him was the Landon Roberts. They both went to the same gap, and then Henry basically just kind of shifted positions, ran up the back, um, where the cutback, and huge gain against the Steelers. So, is it a situation where the defense is saying it's one particular guy at all times, or is it a situation where it's one guy every single time that something happens? There's just that they cannot. You know how when we used to complain about the Steelers offense, and I think a lot of us are still complaining about the Steeler offense, but not completing a full game, especially over the last couple of years. I think that, you would have times where the Steelers would be good in the beginning of the game, and then they would allow the opposing team to come back and make it a close game, or it'd be the game would have gotten away from the Steelers and they come back and make it a close game as well. I just kind of felt that was kind of the situation here. You know what I mean? Where the defense hasn't, it's not complete. It's missing a little bit, and one person here and there, and that's what's getting exploited. I remember quite a bit early on in the season that the persons that were calling the game, the announcers, they mentioned that there was receivers open, from in the Steelers defensive back, but the pressure got to them too quick, or because of the pressure that had been getting to them, the quarterback didn't go through his full progressions or whatever the case may have been. During that time, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, Herbig were a big part of why the quarterbacks are trying to get the ball out of their hands quickly, and maybe perhaps missing some of those reads. They both have gone injured, or all three of them actually. Herbig, he went down with a hamstring. Alex Highsmith went down with an ankle, and TJ Watt is dealing with an ankle as well. And, I think that he's also dealing with a hand injury, it appeared. He was kind of struggling with his hand during the game. It was the one that he uses to punch the ball out. And to be honest with you, he just didn't look like himself out there. I think he's still dealing with the ankle. This time, like I mentioned, is going to be good for him. But there were receivers open earlier on in the year. It's just the pressure was getting there. And when you play good offenses that can read what you're trying to do on defense, it's going to be a very difficult task. I think it's been stated by multiple offenses already that that the Steelers, are not necessarily vanilla, but you get what you see, right? Like, they're not going to try to disguise too much. And maybe it's because of the inexperience in the defense. I thought that maybe Beanie Bishop could have been an issue, and that's why they were trying to, make it simpler, so to speak. But, Cam Sutton has been in there more and more, and I think that's a mistake at this point. I think they need to go back to Beanie Bishop. Cam Sutton, I don't know if he's maybe he's still going through some things off the field that have his mind occupied, or things like that. But yeah, I think at this point, in the inside, I think we need to see more Beanie Bishop, and on the outside, let's just keep it out there with Corey Trice. Now, I know Corey didn't look the greatest either against the Chiefs. He was giving off a lot of room there. But to me, it appeared that the defense was running more zone type of defenses. And I think that was to protect the young cornerbacks and defensive backs for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. But, I mean, it really, in my opinion, maybe isn't the best. That's not playing the players to their best strength, right? Corey Trice is a bigger, taller, athletic guy who is physical, wants to get you on the line. Not a guy that's going to give you space type of guy, from what I've seen in his play, in his short amount of play. He seems to me to be more like the Joey Porter type of cornerback than a zone type of cornerback. I'm hoping Joey Porter comes back soon. I don't know if he'll be back for this game. If I had to take a bet on it, I would say no. think it's some sort of sprain in his knee, the PMCL, something like that nature. I'm not a doctor, and those things can linger for a bit, and it's usually a 4 to 6 week type of thing. So hopefully he ends up getting healthy and able to make a return, if not for this game, but at least for the playoffs. Because although the Steelers ended up losing 3 games over this span, they are in the playoffs. They have clinched a playoff position. They are no longer first in the AFC North. They are 1 game behind the Baltimore Ravens. And so now at this point, they're sitting in the 5th seed, which would basically give a playoff, or have the Steelers going to Houston for the first playoff game. I don't live too far from Houston, so that's not. And I had to have playoff tickets for it in Pittsburgh if the Steelers end up winning against the Bengals and somehow the Browns end up beating the Ravens, because the Steelers can still win the AFC North. If the Ravens lose and the Pittsburgh Steelers win, the Steelers end up getting the AFC North. They get their hats and T-shirts, and they get an automatic first round home playoff game. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I have no idea. I doubt it, to be honest with you. The Browns have gone to DTR. They don't really know who they are as an offense or have an identity. They left Jameis Winston. They benched him, and I don't know how many players are going to be playing in this game, right? I mean, are you going to really risk maybe losing a Myles Garrett for all of next season too for something that happened in a meaningless last game? Probably not. But any given Sunday, and the Browns have been known to give the Baltimore Ravens a little bit of trouble. So, especially on the running game, hopefully the Browns will come through for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think I've ever asked or said that before, but that's the only chance that the Steelers have to get a playoff home game. But if not, and let's just say the Ravens beat the Browns and Steelers beat the Bengals, they would have clinched the 5th seed and gone to Houston for the first game. If the Steelers can win against the Bengals and win confidently, right? And win, what's the word I'm looking for? Convincingly. There we go. I think that will, even though if the Steelers don't get the home playoff game, I think that type of confidence going into potentially Houston, that would be huge. Houston's kind of dealing with some injuries on their own. They look like a shadow of themselves earlier this season. It's been an up and down season for them. I think the Steelers can go in there and take care of business if that ends up being the matchup. And I think that builds up even more confidence for the Steelers to do something that they have not done in a very, very long time, which is win a playoff game. Now, I know that's not the goal or the objective, but that's the first step to getting a Super Bowl, is winning a playoff game. So it has to happen, right? And I think that if it does happen, that's a huge confidence boost for this team. And then you can perhaps, it'll be a different outcome against some of these top tier elite teams in the NFL. But yeah, defensively, this is bad. A lot of people have been saying, hey, fire Terrell Austin. He's got to get out of there. It's not really Terrell Austin's defense, is it? I mean, every defensive coordinator has come out and spoken about how Mike Tomlin's the real defensive coordinator. He's the one that's out there calling the defensive plays, et cetera, et cetera. Which is why I think a lot of the reasons why his defensive coordinators haven't really gotten any high, coaching jobs, head coaching jobs, things of that nature. It's probably because it's not even them running the defense, and the defense has been suspect for a while, to be honest with you. Especially in the I thought that they did pretty good last year, but injuries or the year before, it's always really good in the beginning of the season, and then injuries take their toll, and the defense ends up just struggling. And this has been a sight that we've seen multiple times. When we can go back to unleashing hell in December, remember that? And this has that kind of feel to it, like, hey, we're here, we got this, we are contenders. Maybe feeling yourself a little bit too much, and then, man, really just blow this to smithereens. Well, we're gonna take a quick break. When we get back, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the offensive side. We'll talk about who I want to see more out there on the field, and much more about your Pittsburgh Steelers. So don't go anywhere. Thank you for staying with us on that. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Before we get back into the content, I want to remind everybody of our website, steelcurrentnetwork.com, your one stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage, where you can catch up to the minute breaking news on your favorite football team. And while you're there, you can check out the other audio only podcasts. Well, if you're listening to me, I'm sure you're listening to those. But don't forget also on Mondays, you'll see me and Shannon White on the Steel Curtain Network YouTube channel for a show called The Hangover. And if you want to listen to that on after the fact on your phone, in your earbuds, things of that nature, and you just want to hear it, then it'll be on soon after the live show goes on YouTube. It'll be on anywhere you find your podcast. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, tune in, do the whole 9 yards. That way you don't miss any of the content. Well, with that being said, let's get back into it. So offensively, this has been rough showing too, right? Little points. A lot of people are pointing at Russell Wilson. I think that some of it is granted. He's had a couple of turnovers at the really worst time. I mean, taking points off the board and even worse, a lot of these turnovers have turned into points for the other team. And so it's like insult to injury type of thing. And they have to stop. I mean, he has to protect the ball. That's the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers went out there and got a Russell Wilson, was to protect the ball. A lot of people are looking at Justin Fields. I'm not sure we're going to see Justin anytime soon. I think he was the third emergency quarterback. He's been dealing with an abdominal injury. Maybe perhaps, depending on this mini bye that the Steelers have right now, that could lead him into maybe getting back at least to quarterback 2. Right now, we don't know when the Steelers are going to be playing the Bengals, whether it's going to be Saturday or Sunday next weekend. But it ends up, well, it doesn't really matter. But if it ends up where the Steelers are after, let's say the Ravens play first and then the Steelers play second, it might be a situation where the Steelers' fortune or future may be already in the books. It might be a situation where the Ravens have already clinched. And if the Ravens clinch on a Saturday, let's say, and the Steelers don't need to put their players out there, I think it's probably for the best benefit of resting some players. Take out even Russell Wilson. I know he's played pretty concerning over the last couple of games, but I would take him out, put in a Justin Fields, and see what he has on this last game. I'd really probably take out a lot of the guys that you are going to be leaning on when it comes to playoff time, especially anybody who's dealing with some sort of nagging injury, like the TJ Watt's ankle and et cetera, things of that nature, to really get right. But if the Ravens go in there and they lose and there's an opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the North, then it's going to be all hands on deck, and the Steelers are going to do everything they can so that they can obtain that goal. But is it just Russ? I mean, I think a huge part of it is the offensive line has been pretty bad. I mean, Dan Moore, who was doing really well earlier on this season, has, shown that ugly side of his game where he's not that great sometimes and is allowing a lot of pressures and hits on the quarterback. The rookies in the interior offensive line, to me, it kind of looks like they might be hitting a rookie wall at this point. It's gotten to the point where McCollum was out there, the Steelers offense looked maybe a little bit better than when Zach Frazier's there. Now, I'm not saying it's all on Zach or he's doing anything bad. I just think that he may have hit a rookie wall himself. There was a situation where he didn't snap the ball, and I think this has happened in more than one game now, where he holds onto the ball either a little too long or he snaps it a little late, something like that, and somebody goes offsides or the ball is snapped when the quarterback's not ready and it's turned into a fumble. Those things weren't happening with McCollum, and I'm not saying that Frazier's the answer. If you put in McCollum, this is going to solve your problems. I'm not necessarily sure that's the case. McCormick as well has seemed to have hit a wall, and that interior rush, and then when you have Broderick Jones and Dan Moore both struggling on the outside, and it's coming from all over the place. There has been times where Russ holds onto the ball a little bit longer than I think I would like. I'm sure most people wouldn't like, some of these times where he's holding the ball so long. Is that because there's no receivers open, or is it because he's not seeing the field? I'm not too certain on that. During the game, it appeared that the announcers, when they showed different plays, that there were receivers running down the field open. He just didn't have enough time to get to those second, third progressions in his read. Maybe. Um, George Pickens, he may be responsible for one of those turnovers that happened over this span. The last one, actually, the interception in the end zone on the throw to Pat Fryermuth. It's been basically said that George was supposed to run a go route there and preoccupy the safety over the top on the left side of the field, which would have left the middle of the field with Pat Fryermuth wide open, and would have been the case. However, George gave up on his route, and the safety didn't have anybody to keep him on the corner side of the field. I think Russ needs to see that before he just decides to throw. Because in that situation, you're basically making your decision you're going to throw there, regardless of anything. You're making that decision pre-snap. All right, I'm going to throw the ball at Pat Fryermuth, no matter what, because had he just looked over a little bit, he would have noticed that George Pickens wasn't there, and that the safety was leaning in there. Now, I get it. Time is the essence. Timing is crucial. So maybe he wanted to get it out there as fast as possible, so that way it was on time. But he did let it go. He chucked it down the field and ended up going, an interception and stopping the Steelers from scoring. And this was just after. This is a play after the Pittsburgh Steelers actually scored with Jaylen Warren. And it got called back for a hold. Now, that's something that I think should be changed. And I think that'll be something that could benefit the Steelers offense and this team in general. And that is playing Jaylen Warren significantly more snaps, especially early on. Najee Harris, I like him as a person. I think he's a great person. I like him as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I like his tenacity. I like his toughness. But production counts, right? And when you have a guy like Jaylen Warren who brings another dynamic or more dynamicness to his game, the aspect of being able to catch the ball out of the backfield and the burst to get up the field to gain yards quickly. He has a low center of gravity. He bounces off of a lot of defenders, and I think that Najee also has a pretty excellent attribute there as well. Not going down very easily. But it just seems that with an offensive line that's kind of struggling, and you're needing somebody that's a little bit shifty, a little bit more fast twitch, it's going to be able to bounce in and out of the line for, a small amount of space to get through. I think we're looking at Jaylen Warren being that guy. And I know a lot of people are going to say too, like when Najee gets out there, the defenses are ran differently. And is it because of the predictability that maybe perhaps they're going to run when Najee's out there? That's probably a huge component to it. But another one might be the fact that they're not respecting his ability to catch the ball and get very far down the field. You know what I'm saying? So I think those things are twofold. And then when you throw in a Jaylen Warren who can cause some damage there if you give him an open spot in the middle of the field, you got to account for that. You got to prepare for that. And I think maybe perhaps that's why he's getting a little bit better looks against the defense, because his skill set requires it. It's kind of like Justin Fields. If he were to enter the game, his skill set requires somebody to keep an eye on him because of his speed and his ability to run. Same thing with Jaylen Warren. And at this point, I want to see more of Jaylen. I don't think Najee is going to be back next year unless he just takes a really, really team-friendly deal, a Terrell Edmonds type of deal. Remember when he was coming out and nobody got him, free agency was going, and then he ended up signing back with the Pittsburgh Steelers for like $2 million a year or something like that. And then the next year he left, went to all over the place, bounced around, ended up coming back to Pittsburgh earlier this season. I'm not sure where he's at now, but is he on the practice squad? Maybe he's on somebody else's team. Maybe Terrell could be a guy that Steelers consider to bring back. If there's a defensive back issue, and maybe perhaps, bringing back a Terrell Edmonds who had some speed. His splash playability wasn't the best, but he really didn't kill you too many times. I say that too many times because there was a couple of times where the ball just went through his hands and into the hands of a wide receiver. But I digress. So to kind of wrap it all in a bow, I think that some players do need to be out there more often. Like I mentioned, Jalen Warren. I think I like to see a little bit more of Pat Fryermuth as well. His snaps are limited. And I definitely want to see more of Darnell Washington. Not that I don't like what I see out of Michael Pruitt. He had an excellent touchdown catch. But I think when you're trying to get the best out of both worlds as far as blocking and catching ability, Darnell Washington and Pat Fryermuth, well, definitely, well, because I'm not sure about Pat's blocking aspect. Maybe that's why he's not on the field as much as many of us would like. He's struggled with that in the past. Not necessarily certain. I really don't know how he's done this year. I'd have to go and look at the All-22 and check that out. Which I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't looked too much of this year. It's been a wild ride for me this year as far as work and things of that nature and my schedule. But to put it up in a bow, I'm very disappointed in this team. As many are. I'm hoping that this mini bye will get the Steelers back in the right track. Whether they have an opportunity to win the North or not, I think that I think the Steelers need to have a big game this week against the Bengals, or upcoming week against the Bengals. Because going in, if the Steelers lose again, or even if the Ravens go out there and win on like a Saturday and you end up benching your starters and stuff like that, I think it's good for rest purposes and things like that. But confidence going into the playoffs, I don't know. I don't know if I like losing the last 4 games in a row. How you have that confidence going in. That was something that was said earlier this season. Remember when the Steelers ended up going like 3-0 and Baltimore was 0-3 and this, that, and a third. A lot of people question, when would you want to have that 3-game mishap? In the beginning of the year or down the stretch? It was nice in the beginning of the year because we got a little bit of a comfortable lead. But, hitting that 3-game losing streak at the end, going into the playoffs, I'd rather go on a winning streak into the playoffs, even if the record ended up being the same, than going on a 3 or 4 game losing streak. So, in my opinion, this needs to be turned around, and it has to be turned around this year or this week. I'm not going to give you guys my prediction yet. I haven't thought too far about that. We're going to have another show just before the Bengals game, maybe, perhaps. Not too certain yet. If the game ends up being played on a Saturday, I doubt that I'll be out here before that game to give my predictions. We'll find out by the time the hangover is, so I'll let you guys know then. I believe that at that point we'll know what the schedule is for the next week. At the end of the day, guys, this next game against the Cincinnati Bengals is not the Pittsburgh Steelers' last game of this season. But it's at the point where you might want to start really, really taking in this part of the season, because it may not go too long after that, especially where the Steelers have played. I hope some things change around. I hope there's some philosophies that get in place, and I hope the personnel that needs to be moved is moved as well. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys have a safe and new and a happy new year. I hope you guys had an excellent holiday season. Be safe out there, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.